I've come to realize that the things that shake you the most are not the weird noises you hear or the overwhelming feelings of loneliness at 3 a.m. The stuff that really gets to you simply being things that your guests do. There have been a few good incidents that have shaken me a bit over my tenure. An intoxicated man waving his gun around at 3 a.m., a woman having a schizophrenic breakdown in a room and having a violent dispute with herself, and a man wandering the halls talking to himself for hours on end. For the sake of the thread, though, I can remember one that struck me as extremely odd. One night, a few hours after I had arrived for my shift, a guest kept coming down and aimlessly wandering around the lobby and breakfast area. He was doing extremely odd things like talking to himself and sitting down at a breakfast table only to stand up and switch chairs at the same table every 2 to 3 minutes. Every time I asked him if he needed help, he would jerk a little and mumble that he didn't need anything. Well, a few hours or so after he finally went to his room, he came back down and said he had turned the heater on and it made him short of breath and needed me to call an ambulance. So even though I was confused, I obliged. About a minute later, the hotel's fire alarms started to go off. The whole time the firemen were going up and down from his room, they kept asking if he had anyone with him or if he was alone, and I kept telling them that he was in fact alone and had no other guests in the room with him. After the firemen left and everything was back to normal, I went to look in the man's room. He had rearranged all of the furniture, put the TV in the bathroom, and had put his trash can in the middle of the room and set it on fire. The thing that troubled me wasn't the fact that the man intentionally set his room on fire and could have possibly burned the hotel down. It was the fact that, even though he was alone, he had small children's clothes spread around the room. I used to work in a hotel in Southern California, doing security. Every night we would get a printout of what rooms were vacant. It was my job to go through all the rooms, ensure all lights are off and all windows are secure. I went into a room and found all the lights on, typical of housekeeping after they clean. I started turning the lights off from the left side of the room, around to the windows and up to the bathroom. The bathroom has French-style doors that open outward toward the room. The doors themselves have only hinges and 2 handles to pull them open, no other devices attached. The doors are also the very lightweight slatted wood. Anyway, I opened the left door out all the way so I could reach around it and turn the light off in the bathroom. After turning the light off, I realized it was freezing in the room, which is not uncommon being housekeeping liked it cold when they worked on a room. I reached up for the thermostat, and when my hand was within 4 inches of it, the left bathroom door I just opened and slammed shut. Terrified, I ran out of the room immediately. While pulling the door shut behind me, the door deadbolt pushed itself out of the lock and it slammed into the door frame. I was petrified when I had to reach inside the door to disengage it. I stood there for a minute or two with my eyes watering, wondering what the fuck just happened. I decided to go back in and look to be sure of what happened. I went in and looked at the door. It was shut. I moved it around to see if it would close on its own, which it wouldn't. I tried throwing the door to slam it, and the door is so lightweight it caught a lot of air and wouldn't even shut all the way after throwing it closed. As far as I could see it, there isn't any explanation for what happened. I stopped going into that room. Several years ago, my college roommate, let's call her S, worked as the night manager for a newly built hotel. As was par for the course, I would often bring coffee in around 1 to 2 a.m. and chat for a while. One night, I showed up to my find S sitting at the front desk shaking her head looking completely perplexed. Allegedly, she had just checked in what could only be described as the doppelganger of our other roommate, M, who was alike down to the same height, hairstyle, eye color, and southern accent. S tried to speak with the new guest and show her a picture of M on her phone, but was rebuffed several times. We both chalked it up to coincidence, as we knew M was visiting her parents, and we went on to enjoy our coffee. Shortly after 2, I decided to head home. It wasn't until around 2:30 when I pulled into our garage that I checked my phone to see a series of texts from S to M and me at 2:17 a.m. Stop. Not funny. You guys suck. What the hell? Naturally, I was confused and called her back. This is when things got weird, and S sounded hysterical on the phone. Apparently, M and I, in the same clothes I wore earlier, had been standing at the end of the main hallway, staring at her. S thought this was a joke and kept calling out to no response. Eventually, the front desk phone rang, and in the time it took to answer it, we both had disappeared. I calmed her down over the phone, and the next morning we talked through the possibilities, trying to rationalize what she saw. The guest who looked like M did come back to the front desk later that morning to inquire about some services, and much to S's surprise, looked only vaguely similar to our roommate. The only thing that scares me to this day, and that I never told her, is that when I got into our house, the kitchen clock was stuck on 2:17, and directly next to it sat a photo of M and I smiling that I had only developed that afternoon. Still no explanations, and nothing ever weird happened at the hotel again, but it still makes me uneasy to this day. I worked at a hotel for about a year. It was usually pretty good. Some people would stay at the hotel for weeks or a month at a time for business reasons. But there was this one old lady that had been there even before I started working that just stayed in her room all day, occasionally leaving to go down the hill and pick berries or something along the street. Maybe get food or other supplies. I don't know. She really wasn't a problem other than not letting people into her room. About January of 2015, she started acting weird, like yelling at people walking by her room, calling down to the front desk, and being angry about things that had never happened. This goes on for about a week, and then she just goes off the deep end. She starts standing outside of her room, yelling at people that entered her sight, no matter how far away they were. She would call down to the front desk, but now she would say eerily creepy things like, "You shouldn't have done that. You'll be sorry for that. I can find you." And then she'd hang up. Eventually, after about 2 weeks, we forcibly ejected her after her credit card declined. She threw a fit and had to be removed off the premises by her son. Let me tell you, going into that room was like entering hell. Stains all over the carpet, blood and feces spread across the walls in the bathroom, blood on the mattresses, empty cans everywhere, Jared foods that stank to high heaven, boxes sealed shut, some with black ooze dripping out of them, light bulbs stacked in the corner, all in perfect condition but not used in the lights. It was horrible. Found out she went off the deep end because she had been denied her pills for some kind of mental thing. Not inexplicable, but scary at the time. Worked as a waiter in an old hotel that was reputedly haunted. The restaurant and the part with the bedrooms were separate buildings and all ground floor. This is important. One afternoon, we were expecting 2 elderly sisters to check in for a few nights, friends of the owner and regular guests, though being a newish member of staff, I'd not met them yet. Well, one of the other waiters mentioned that they'd arrived, and would I go put a bottle of claret in their room while they were being helped out of the car? No worries. Picked a bottle, opened it, got 2 glasses and a tray, and nipped out the back of the restaurant, across the courtyard, past the 2 old ladies getting out of their car, and into the main building. Turned into the corridor leading to the bedrooms. Now, at this point I knew there was nobody else in the building, No other guests, and only the owner and a couple of waiters were around between lunch and dinner service. I'd also been told the stories about the hotel ghost. Apparently an old woman in gray who'd hanged herself when it was a coaching inn. I was therefore perturbed to see a headless figure in faded Victorian dress shuffling away from me down the corridor in complete silence. To my credit, I didn't actually drop the tray, but I did eventually emit a noise resembling a Harrier jump jet winding up, causing the figure to turn around. One of the two old ladies, suffering with severe osteoporosis that caused her head to rest below her shoulders, had been let in the side door ahead of me so she didn't have to walk so far. I felt like an idiot. Told her I'd tripped with the tray but saved it. Not sure she believed me. I worked at a hotel in Florida, a fairly upscale place. One day after a particularly bad string of thunderstorms, I went to clean the pool. They had an actual pool guy they called from time to time, but only when the pool was really bad. When I first looked at the pool, I brought the manager outside and told him I felt like it was out of my scope. The pool was covered in debris, leaves, plants, mulch, and dirt. He told me he thought I could handle it. Whatever, guess I'm scooping this thing out with a net all day. So I start scooping, probably had been scooping for an hour or so, when this girl comes to the pool in her string bikini and asks if it's swimmable. I ask her if she really wants to swim in that. She just kind of shrugged and decided to lie down in a sun chair until I finished scooping the pool out. We started making small talk, and finally she said she just wanted to dip her legs in. She does so, and after about 10 to 15 seconds, I notice some weird-looking things swimming around in the pool, and they're coming right for her feet. I scream, "Yo, get up. Get out. Get out now." She looks at me like I'm crazy, but gets out. I point and she looks down, and about 10 to 12 of these giant cockroaches are now gathering near the wall where she was soaking her feet. She freaked out and ran off, and I assume went back to her room. I went and got the manager, told him to either call the pool guy or I'd do it himself because I wasn't working with these monsters. He actually opened one of the pool filters and came across about 15 or so more of them in the filter. It was a sight you don't really unsee. Before I was born, my parents decided to move to the coast and open their own little seaside hotel. The first thing to do when they moved in was to clean all the rooms, so they took half each to speed things up. My mom told me this story when I was little. She was in room 8 doing some vacuuming when the whole carpet started rippling. When I was little, I didn't think this sounded scary at all, as I just thought that maybe the carpet had got caught on the vacuum or something, and so I never really thought about it again. Fast forward to about a month ago. I remembered this old story and made fun of my mom a bit for thinking it was creepy, when it was obviously explainable. She looked confused and told me I must have not understood her when I was little. Apparently what had actually happened was that the entire carpet had rippled in a constant fluid wave type motion, and all the furniture and herself had been lifted up and down off of the floor for about 10 seconds. She then screamed bloody murder at my dad down the hallway and told him they were selling the place before it had even opened. He managed to convince her otherwise, but she never went back in that room. It scares me more because my mom doesn't believe in the supernatural or anything like that, and she doesn't have any other creepy stories at all, just this one that she doesn't like to talk about often. Hotel bartender here. Started a few months ago at a more upscale place. It was a quiet evening, and a distraught-looking guy came to the bar and ordered a shot and a beer. I was catching some fucked-up vibes. To lighten the mood, I tried to drum up some light-hearted conversation. He tried to talk but couldn't. so I asked him if everything was all right. He said no. I asked, "What's wrong? Anything I can do to help? How about a plate of some food?" He declines, proceeded to tell me the escort he hired slit her wrists and is a corpse in his room's bathtub. I jumped back and was like, "Holy shit, I'm calling 911. After calling 911, I ran back to the bar to find the man slumped on the bar not moving. I run over to check on him, and his pulse is weak and he is pale and cold. After, the police and medics arrive and cleaned up the mess. There was the man's end of life note found in the room by another guest a few days later that said he wanted to feel a woman's touch one more time on something that killed him at my bar. I got a week off work to deal with it, and was shocked when I came back to find everything normal, like nothing happened. I worked as a sous chef at the hotel. The employees there told me all of the juicy ghost stories, forbidden rooms, labyrinths, basements, hauntings, and so on. I never really paid it any mind until an encounter that creeped me out so much that I quit. It was slated to be a busy weekend as we had multiple functions that weekend, including our famous Sunday brunch in the room. The head chef asked me to come in super early to get a head start on prep. I arrived around 4:30 in the morning. I immediately went into crunch mode since I had a mountain of things to get done. I was deep in work mode with my back to the dining room when weird sounds started to penetrate my veil of concentration. Kids were playing in the dining room. Not my problem, so I kept my stride. After a few moments, a bad feeling washed over me. What the hell were kids doing playing in the room at 4:30 in the morning? A cold, icy feeling shot up my spine and out of the corner of my eye. I saw the door to the room swing open just a bit. I began to hear the unmistakable sound of rubber balls bouncing into the kitchen. I turned and saw a red rubber kickball, clear as day, bound into the galley with the far-off sound of a child's laughter floating through the room. I just froze. I have never been that freaked out in my entire life. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I stood rooted to the spot. I must have stood stock still for a full minute. Then, the rear doors opened, and I heard the sound of familiar voices. My reinforcements were there. I'd never been more relieved to hear other people's voices than at that moment. One of the chefs helping me that morning made her way to the main line, and immediately stopped in her tracks when she saw me and said, "You look like you just saw a ghost." I quickly told her what happened. We searched the galley for the ball and turned on all the lights. But nothing. No ball and no children. I put my 2 weeks' notice in the following day. The manager of the hotel asked me to sit down with him a few days later. He had heard my tale and wanted to chat me up about it. I thought that I had heard all of the tales associated with the alleged haunting of the hotel, but there was one I hadn't yet. Not long after the hotel opened, a little girl accidentally chased her red ball off a fifth-floor balcony and died. The manager said her ghost was seen frequently on the 5th floor in Victorian dress and has even reportedly played catch with some of the guests' children. Her red ball was famous among workers of the hotel in previous generations, and its ghostly appearance frequented the banquet rooms, and yes, the kitchens too.